And warm welcome to today's masterclass. My name is Frida, and I'm head of marketing at Davy. And with me today, I have Petter, who's our CPO. He's leading the product team and development. But he will introduce himself in a bit. I think the majority here today knows well about Davy, but for those of you who don't, Davy is a tenant experience platform. And the purpose of the platform is to simplify everyday living for tenants. So a tenant can, for example, report issues, talk to neighbors, then they can pay rent, but they can also access services such as electricity, broadband, and insurances. This, of course, makes their everyday living smoother, but also it makes landlords and property managers living and daily work easier and more efficient. So I guess you can say it's kind of a win-win. Short introduction also what a masterclass is. At AV, we often have, masterclasses with the purpose to educate, inform, and inspire. So it can be an old product release that we want to talk more in details about, or a new release that we want to inform about. Practical information, the session will be covered for 30 minutes, and this will include a Q&A at the end. So please write your comments or questions in the Q&A, and we will cover them at the end. And if we don't have time to answer all of the questions, we will, of course, send you an email or such afterwards. The session will be recorded, and I will send you an email with the recording as well. But I think it's time for me now to let you, Petter, enter the stage. Take it away.
Petter Davison, CPO at AV, or Chief Product Officer. So I'm leading our product organization, and I'm very much involved in the topic that we're going to talk about today, which is Davy and how we apply AI on customer support in real estate. I'm going to give you a quick introduction to what Davy is today, why we built it, and so on and so forth, for those of you who haven't been introduced to this feature. But then I'm really excited about doing some announcements on some news and updates and new capabilities that we are releasing over the next few weeks and months. And then we'll do a demo with some of those new features. And again, like Frida said, if you have questions, put them in the chat. That's right. Yeah, put them in the chat, and we'll spend time on them in the end of the session. But to start, what is Davy? Well, Davy is an AI customer support agent specifically designed and built for real estate. So Davy is using generative AI and is there for your tenants to give them service, which means answering questions, helping them solve problems, automate different tasks they need help with, and so on and so forth. We released Davy a bit more than 2 years ago, beginning of 2023. So we're starting to get some really interesting data on how this is actually working out. So just to share a couple of data points, we see, for example, that Davy is able to answer more than 60% of general questions that come from tenants, which means we can save a lot of emails and phone calls and tickets. Another interesting data point is that we see across the board on all our customers that about half or a little less than half of all interactions with Davy happen outside of office hours, which I find is quite interesting. So let's break down Davy in its core capabilities, and let's start with the features or the capabilities that Davy has today. And this is the high level. These are the four, call it cornerstones of Davy. These are the things you need to understand if you're going to implement Davy, and it's also where we spend time in our projects together, configuring these different capabilities. So to start with, Davy has a persona, and this is where we can customize how Davy interacts with your tenants, the branding, tonality, welcome messages, well, how you want to interact with your tenants. This is where we control that. Then we have the knowledge base, which is essential to making sure Davy can provide a good service. So the knowledge base consists of all the information and data and knowledge that Davy need to be able to answer questions and solve problems. The third one we call dispatches, which enables Davy to do handovers to an external party or a feature in AV and so on and so forth. So it's a way for you to instruct Davy that when certain questions arise, then we shouldn't handle them, we should hand them over to someone else. Common example is broadband. A lot of you get a lot of questions from your tenants about, broadband not working, how do I turn it on, and so on and so forth. But in the majority of the cases, these are not questions you typically handle. You redirect them to an external provider that supports the tenants with broadband. And that's what we can do here with Davy as well, instructing Davy to forward the tenant to a certain website or system or person. Last but not least, we have something called insights. And this is where we can track all conversations Davy have in detail, but we can also do it on an aggregated level, meaning that we can understand how Davy perform over time, and we can identify areas that we need to improve. So those of you who are current customers to us and are working with Davy, I think you recognize these features. They have been, they have evolved, and we've been iterating on them over the last couple of years. But we're now announcing a number of new capabilities that I am and the whole team is really excited about. Before I jump into them, there are some dates here, and I want to make it clear that these are our ambition for when we want to make these features general available. We are already piloting all of them and testing them out with customers, but depending on how those pilots go, we might release these features earlier than stated here, or we might decide to delay the release a couple of weeks or a month. But this is our ambition. So let's start with public Davy, which is something a lot of you have asked for. Today, Davy can only be exposed in our tenant app or in our web-based tenant portal. But going forward, you will be able to expose and publish Davy on any website, any public website, or if you have a marketplace or a queue or something else. So I think that's a huge improvement. You can use the same knowledge base, but now you can put Davy in more channels. The next feature we called Create Case, and it's not a very impressive name of a feature, but it's actually the announcement that I am most excited about in this whole presentation and session today. So what we're doing is that we built the first full, what's called an agentic flow, where Davy can now act much more like a human experienced support agent. So if Davy runs into a case that he cannot solve himself, he now knows how to escalate this. He will, or she will, it will prioritize the issue, classify it, collect information needed to solve it, find the right tool or system where we need to create the maintenance request, and then go on and actually create that maintenance request on behalf of the tenant. Moving on, we have something called web search. And even today, Davy can access external web pages as part of the knowledge base. But we're now expanding this capability and we make it much more powerful. We will now allow Davy to access whole websites and base the knowledge base on the websites you include in the knowledge base. But we do this also with guardrails where you can state how Davy should interpret and filter the information it finds on a specific website. One common example is that if you allow Davy to read everything that's on your public website, there will be a lot of phone numbers and addresses that you maybe don't want Davy to hand out. You'd rather see that the tenant continues talking to Davy rather than picking up the phone. Then you can instruct Davy to read the website, but disregard certain type of information. Then finally, we have something called property card. Again, a feature name that is not very impressive, but I think this can become very powerful. So over the last 2 years, we learned that the major challenge, I would say, when implementing Davies is getting the knowledge base right. What we learned is that most of our companies or customers, they have pretty good documented knowledge when it comes to general information. What does it mean to live in any building? But when it comes to this local information, where tenants typically have questions, information that is associated with one building or one area, where can I find the laundry room? That information is seldom documented in a structured way. It's rather, it sits in the head of a local caretaker or a local property manager. So what we're building here is a way to create templates for a property or an area that we design together with you. And then we have a workflow where we can push these templates to the people who actually have this knowledge. And they then get a very intuitive UI where they can enter the information. For example, where do I find the laundry room when I live in this building? All of this information goes into the knowledge base, meaning that Davy becomes as knowledgeable as your local caretaker or local property manager. So we think this has huge potential in improving the performance of Davy. Okay, so we've looked at some of the features that exist in Davy and some of the news and updates that is coming. And before we do the demo, I just want to take one step back and look at what this means for Davy as a support tool in your customer service organizations. So when we launched Davy back in 2023, it was really a smart AI-powered chatbot, to be frank. It could answer questions, but it couldn't do much more. But what we've seen it has evolved into is much more like a digital coworker that can offload your customer support organization. So with these capabilities we looked at in the previous slide, you can now design the role for Davy, how you want Davy to act. You can give Davy tasks and instruct Davy to really act like a support agent in your team. How do you handle water leakages if it's a weekend? And what are your process for escalating issues into your property management system or CRM system? And then you can give Davy knowledge and tools required to perform the task. So we're seeing that it has a big impact not only on the customer experience, but we're really starting to see how it can offload the work happening in your customer support function. Yeah, so before we jump into the demo, I'm actually going to give some kudos to our product and engineering team because it's a big launch we're doing, and it's amazing work that has gone into this. So it's been led by our product manager, Adam Lidman, from the product side, and then our CTO, Igor Kova. And they, together with the whole engineering team, have done some really amazing stuff that we are going to share with you now. So let's jump into the demo. We're going to use a generic demo environment. So it's just branded Avy. And if you have Davy turned on, it typically shows up down here. And if I click on that one, I can now start having a conversation with Davy. So let's start with something simple. I'm going to do... This is quite a common example. We see a lot of questions and interactions when people are moving in and moving out, generating emails, phone calls, and so on and so forth. And hopefully now Davy will be able to handle some of those questions. So I asked, what do I need to think about when I'm moving out next weekend? And I got a lot of things on my to-do list here. Cleaning, wow. I don't like cleaning, so let's see if I can ask some more questions about that. I ask if David has a checklist for the cleaning. Let's see what I get. Wow, I actually got a pretty long checklist here. That sounds a lot. So I ask, what happens if I don't clean before I move out? And then I get an answer from Davy saying that, yeah, it makes it clear that I could potentially be charged for cleaning costs if it isn't cleaned properly. So this is an example of these, more simple questions solved by information where Davy accessed the knowledge base. And if I want to see how this was actually done, I can go into the admin panel. And here we have all the conversations Davy have had in detail, meaning that it's not a black box. We can always go back and see what questions tenants have and what answers Davy provide. And if I go down here and now see the questions I asked about moving out and the answers I got, but I can also go and see what sources in the knowledge base did Davy use to create this answer. So here's a list of different sources that Davy used, and I can from here actually click and go straight into the knowledge base. So this means I can always go back and quality assure the conversations Davy have. And I can also look at this from a high-level perspective. So we have something called insights, where I now can track Davy's performance over time, see how well he's performing in different areas, or are there certain questions Davy's better at or worse? And this is, of course, important for the team then to improve the knowledge base, the handovers, and the overall performance of Davy. But let's jump back to Davy and take a few other examples. I'll take this one. So now I'm asking about something that's very specific to my building and something that's going on right now. But I still get an answer here where Davy says that there's currently a renovation going on this week in the stairway and the elevator, which of course explains the sounds I'm hearing. So what Davy did here is that he accessed a feature we have, which is called the notice board, where our customers post information that could be for a very specific building or stairway even. And in this case, there was a message stating that, there's going to be some maintenance work happening this week, which David picked up. Let's see. Let's take another example. Talked about handovers before, how we can instruct Davy to stop the conversation and send the tenant somewhere else. And I actually have an example, conversation starter here. Have I paid my rent? So if I ask Davy that, in this case, I've instructed Davy not actually to answer, but to hand over the tenant to a feature we have in AV, which is showing my unpaid invoices. So this was an example of a handover inside the platform, but we can also do handovers outside the platform to another website or something else. Let's take the last example, and that's going to be how Davy can create maintenance requests. But before I show how Davy does it, let me show you how it typically looks like if we're not using AI. So if I'm a tenant, I have, let's say, a power outage in my apartment or in my kitchen. I can always, use AV to go and create a maintenance request. And this is how it might look like. I get into the section with cases. I have a number of different types of cases I can create. So that's the first decision I need to make. Well, in this case, this sounds like a maintenance request. Now AV talks to your property management system or CRM system. So all the questions we see here is now coming from an external ticketing system. And the tenant needs to answer a number of questions, starting with, well, is it your apartment you're reporting to or parking? Well, apartment. What area does the request apply to? Well, it's the kitchen where I have no power. And then what type of problem do you have? Well, my kitchen appliances doesn't work. So it could be that, or it could be power outage. I'll go with power outage. And then describe the problem. Well, power outage. And then can we enter with the master key? Yes. Do you have a pet? Well, yes, I do. I have a dog. Okay, so now I populated the form for a maintenance request and I can set it in. Problem with this process that we see often is that customers or tenants aren't that good at filling in these forms. They pick the wrong form. They don't spend time understanding how to tag these cases. They pick the wrong option in the drop-down list. And the problem descriptions are quite often very weak and not a lot of details. So let's look at how Davy does this instead. So we go back here, and I'll start with just saying that how I have a power. Okay, so I'm saying I have a power outage. What David starts with is trying to help me solve the problem first. So he gives me a couple of things I could try, check my fuses, a few other things. Well, I'm going to answer that. Fuses, they are okay. Still no power. Please come. Okay, so I'm making it clear that I need some help. And Dave acknowledged this. So he actually says, well, we might need to open a case to resolve this. And then he asks me if it's okay if he can gather some more details. So what happened in the background is that Dave understood we need to escalate. He then classified the issue as a maintenance request. And now he gets into the process of qualifying this issue, which is what any experienced human support agent would do. They wouldn't settle with power outage as a description. They would, of course, ask a few follow-up questions. So in this case, Davey asks, have you checked your earth fault breaker? Yeah, I've checked that one. And then let's see what else he says. Have I installed any new appliances? Yeah, actually, I have installed something new in the kitchen. And then let's see what happens next. I think right now Dave is talking to the property management system or CRM system, and he looks at how do I create a maintenance request, and then he populated a form for me. So here you can see I didn't have to pick this is a maintenance request. I didn't need to do the tagging. The problem description is actually much better, and I can just go on and submit. And this demo we ran in English since we have an international audience here today. But the demo environment is configured in Sweden. So what we told Davy was that whatever language the tenant is using, respond in that language. And if the property management systems have questions in Swedish, then translate them to the language the tenant is using. But if I now go into the cases, and this is the case that just got created in the property management system, I can, of course, look at the conversation history. It was all in English. But if I look at the case details, here we're actually showing to the tenant that what we sent in when it comes to the problem description was Swedish, because we want to make sure that the title and the description in this case is translated to Swedish. So we think this is a way of getting more tenants that might not be really fluent in Swedish or even English or Finnish to now do proper maintenance requests in Arabic or German or any other language. So that's pretty exciting to see how that is now working out. Okay, I think that was about it, what I had planned to demo. So I think we're going to go back to see if there are any questions.
Thank you, Peter. So yeah, we have a few questions, and I see that the time is quite tight. So let's see if we can answer all of them. But the first question is related to pictures. So does AV support images and pictures is the first question.
Yes, Davy supports uploading images and pictures and documents. So if it's needed to create the maintenance request, then Davy can ask for that and upload it. What we don't support today is analyzing those pictures. We already started proof of concepts where we see it's going to work out really well. So you could think about, if I had a power outage is a bad example. If we had a water leakage, we could ask for a picture of the drain that is clogged or something. And then when Data gets that, he could also look for, are there any tiles that are broken or cracked, or are there signs of mold or something else. That we don't support today, but that we're aiming for and we're testing it out.
Great. And this is also a question going back to one of your first slides where we talked about what Davy is today and the new features. Are dispatches using function or tool calling? Don't.
Can you take that question? Are these
We might get back to the person who asked the question for more details, but are dispatches using function/tool calling?
okay? No, I understand. Well, tool calling is if you talk AI design patterns is kind of a broad concept. So in a way, yes, it does. But I think the person asking this is more thinking is dispatches actually talking to an API in a different system, and that's not what we're doing with dispatches. So, but what you saw when Dave was actually creating maintenance requests, that's a tool calling where Dave is now actually talking to Momentum, DTEC, Microsoft, Lime CRM, any other system that we already are integrated in. So this becomes a bit technical, but basically any integration our platform has today, we could, turn to a tool for Davy, and Davy can already speak to those systems and perform those tasks. So we just started with maintenance requests as a tool calling because we think that's the most high value impact use case. But it could be booking a laundry room in Aptus or anything else where we actually have an API call today.
Cool. And also saw a question regarding public Davy, and I think regarding when it's launching. And it's September, right? So it's now, or is it?
It says in the deck October.
October.
But I think the question comes from well, put it this way: my product team said, "Well, you could put it September." So I was a bit on the defense here, said, "Let's put some margin," but we're planning for September. This is more to be on the safe side. I put October here. So put it this way: end of September, beginning of October, it will be generally available.
Great. And I think I'm just entering the last slide because I think this also answers one of the questions you had. If you're interested to know more about Davy or try it out, I guess the best way is to contact you, Petter, or me, of course, to have a discussion how to work with Davy. Yeah.
Very good.
Perfect.
Thank you all.
Thank you. We actually have one more question. Sorry, Petter. And which exact LLM are we using?
We're using different LLMs for different tasks. The main LLM being used is OpenAI's GPT-5 now on Azure, but there are certain tasks Davy do where he can, call other agents where we are using other LLMs. But the main LLM is GPT-5 right now.
And time is up. I think we have a few questions, but I will make sure that we email you with the answers afterward. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and have a nice day ahead.